Okay, so this is the video where I lose like 50 subscribers because you guys realize I'm a gross fucking hipster. This is 10 movies I love. This isn't my top 10 list. This is kind of just a random list of 10 movies that I really love deeply. And the only other criteria is that none of these movies are actually on my top 10 list. I want to make it 10 movies that I love, but not my 10 favorites. You know what I'm saying? Also, there's no particular order to this list. It's kind of randomly ordered. Stick with it. It's good. There's some good shit in here. At number 10, Touch of Evil.
Risto! Risto! Your control is plenty mad. He wants to talk to you. Risto! Risto, come back here!
If you haven't seen this movie, do me a favor and just watch this 3-minute opening shot. That should tell you everything you need to know about whether or not you're actually going to watch the rest of it. So I think my favorite thing about Touch of Evil is how stylish it is. I mean, it has that dark and gritty noir movie atmosphere, but I think it kind of sets itself apart in a few ways. And one of those is how beautifully shot it is. It has a lot of very vibrant and energetic shots all the way through it. And it has this rhythm, actually. The pacing of this movie is very noticeable. It has a rhythm that kind of carries you through the entire movie. It's actually distinct to the 1998 version. So if you're gonna watch the movie, try to get your hands on the 1998 re-edit. Another thing that's kind of unique to the 1998 recut is the way that the music is used. There is a lot of music in this movie, but not actually that much score music. Most of the time this music comes from parties next door or celebrations down the street.
I wondered if you could turn that music off.
So you very often end up with scenes where the direction and the lighting and everything is trying to get you to feel a certain way, but the music totally contradicts that. And it's this weird clash. And it's stuff like that that makes Touch of Evil maybe not the best movie on this list, but probably the coolest movie on this list.
Why would I be following a cop? He's an idiot.
At number 9, we've got Lost Highway. To say that Lost Highway has a dream logic to it is probably a giant cliche. But honestly, I feel like there's no other way to say it. This is totally unavoidable. There are two plots to this movie. There's the plot with this couple living in LA who gets this videotape on their doorstep. And it's a videotape of the front of their house, which isn't all that creepy, but it becomes kind of creepy.
Must be from a real estate agent.
The second plot is this 19-year-old mechanic kid who has this friendship with a mob boss.
You're my man, Pete.
Where it starts to get really strange is that some of these characters may or may not have swapped bodies at a certain point. And things that seemed like they were happening in a chronological order might not have been happening that way at all. And at the center of all this mess are two things. This mysterious man, played by Robert Blake.
We've met before, haven't we?
Who haunts my dreams, and Patricia Arquette.
Someone broke in and taped us while we slept.
There are no words to describe Patricia Arquette in this movie. I've already said too much about this movie. If you haven't seen it, just watch it.
I want you to get a fucking driver's manual. I want you to study that motherfucker. And I want you to obey the goddamn rules.
At number 8, we have Force Majeure. So I probably wouldn't have even watched this movie if it wasn't for my good friend Icky, who kept hounding me to watch it until I finally did. What's up, Icky? So there's this family that goes on a ski trip to the beautiful snowy mountains in France. I think on their second day there, they're out on the balcony having breakfast and this avalanche starts coming down. Obviously it's a controlled avalanche and everything's gonna be fine.
Det är såna jäkla krafter.
Är det safe?
Ja, de vet vad de gör.
Pappa!
Ja, det är ingen fråga.
For a moment, it starts to seem like this avalanche is just gonna wipe them all out. And what does Dad do? He grabs his phone, he grabs his gloves, and he fucks off. So the dust settles, and everybody can come back and everything's okay. But now, the family has to spend the rest of their holiday knowing that their dad would have left them for dead. Ooh, it's so achy, but it's so funny, and it is so well directed. That's the major thing about this movie, is the craft involved. There are very few cuts in this movie. So you have a lot of really, really long takes, but they're not long takes with a lot of flair. The camera's locked down and it doesn't really move that much. The characters just kind of move around in the frame and you watch them for a long time doing their thing. It's a style that I have seen before in a few other movies, but it feels especially intentional in this movie. I don't know how to explain it exactly, but it just feels so well done. Just in that department, just in the cutting, the pacing, and the framing, it's like perfection, you know?
It's what's controlling and then they know what they're doing. And
He got so scared that he ran away from the table.
No, I did not. No.
Where this directing really becomes great is where all of these things play into this thought experiment that the movie is. The men in the family, you know, the man of the house. What happens when he is exposed for his greatest weakness? What happens? It's fun to watch that little experiment unfold. And to watch it unfold by somebody who's so in control of the craft. I love it.
Vi har ett publikum liksom. Be om ditt privatliv. Can we have some privacy?
What do you want?
At number 7, Repo Man. So Touch of Evil takes the spot as the coolest movie on this list, but Repo Man is definitely the most fun.
Wow, that was intense.
Repo Man's always intense.
This movie is fun in just about every way that a movie can be fun, and it's best enjoyed with a bunch of friends and a bunch of beers. The story is about this kid named Otto.
Yeah, it's Otto.
Auto parts?
He accidentally repossesses a car and accidentally becomes a repo man. This movie is stacked with all of these weirdo side characters.
Fuck this, let's go do some crimes.
And all of these funny little details in the background that are just hilarious if you actually notice them.
Doobity-doo-wop-wop, say what, yeah?
The central driving force of the movie is this Chevy Malibu, and there's a $20,000 reward for whoever finds it. So everyone in the city is looking for this Chevy Malibu, but there's something about it that they don't know.
It happens sometimes. People just explode. Natural causes.
This movie also has kind of a big cult following, but it deserves to be bigger. This movie deserves to be every bit as huge as The Big Lebowski.
Somebody pissed on the floor again.
At number 6, California Split.
Alright, sir. Double T.
This movie gets me. So there's these two guys, Bill and Charlie, who develop this really cool friendship over a mutual love of gambling. Bill is really more the main character. He's kind of a mopey dude. He's kind of moody all the time, but every time the two of them are hanging out together, they just have the best time. They have so much fun.
How'd you get away from work? I wish I was as good at this as I am at getting away.
A little footwork,
from
a little
work.
razzle dazzle.
A lot
The
of
minstrel
razzle
man strikes again, right? All right.
Now this is a gambling movie after all, so I'm pretty sure you can guess what's gonna happen. One of these guys gets into financial trouble and tries to gamble his way out of it. Gambling movies are not exactly a breeding ground for creativity, because at the end of the day there's two possibilities, win or lose. But the thing that's great about this movie is that it's so hyper aware of those two possibilities that it somehow manages to become unpredictable. And you start actually becoming involved in the gambling yourself because you see them gamble so often, and sometimes they win and sometimes they lose, and you start playing the odds in your head. You gotta give credit to the screenwriter for that, because that's clever plot design. This movie's gotta come with a couple of warnings though. First off is the dialogue. About 90% of what people say in this movie is totally inconsequential. It is just babble, it's waffle, they just blab to each other.
Your Fruit Loops. Well, you get some milk on it. I like some milk.
Got it.
That shaving cream's not gonna stain your white sweater. Don't worry. Nobody's gonna tell your mother. Just put it down and it'll all wash out.
Let me taste it for you.
They just talk endlessly. But this isn't a weak point. This is actually one of the best things about the movie. Number 3. What is number 3 again? This movie takes about 45 minutes before anything actually consequential happens. So it's about 45 minutes where you're really not sure where this movie is going. And if that sounds boring to you, then don't even try to watch this movie. You can't handle this movie.
Hi. I was just looking for the guide. Go back to sleep.
At number 5, Inherent Vice. This movie gets a lot of hate. I'm not gonna say it's undue hate because I can kind of relate. The first time I watched it, I actually didn't like this movie either. I was extremely disappointed because I'm a fan of this director and I was super excited, and the trailer looked fucking hilarious.
What a wonderful world this would be.
But the movie wasn't really that funny. It was kind of mismarketed, and it ended up being kind of overlong and irritating because there's so much needless shit in there. It's all over the place.
Whoa.
Are you all right?
Am I?
Are you?
Ordinarily, we're the ones asking the questions.
And your question is, which side am I on?
Good question.
Wrong answer.
The second time that I watched this movie, and all of the times after that, I started to make a little bit more sense of the plot, but that's not really the thing that's made me fall in love with this movie. It's really more like the atmosphere and the world of this movie. This Gordita Beach place, where everyone is paranoid and stoned all the time, and there's all these weird characters, and the set pieces in this movie are killer. They are just so well crafted as little scenes. I think that's really what I've fallen in love with in this movie is, yeah, the general overall atmosphere and the weirdness of it, but mostly phenomenal little pieces of filmmaking all through this movie. Inherent Vice.
Remember that day with the Ouija board? I miss those days.
Number 4, The Graduate.
Left its seeds while I was sleeping.
Now, in case you don't know, The Graduate is a major classic.
Mrs. Robinson, you're trying to seduce me. Aren't you?
It's about this guy named Ben who's graduated college and he's gone back home, but instead of starting his life, he starts an affair with an older woman in the neighborhood. Now the plot takes a lot of twists and turns and it gets exciting and thrilling, but there's this constant undercurrent of some kind of inner turmoil that this main character is dealing with. The style of this movie is really beautiful. There's a lot of scenes here that should just be straightforward montages or straightforward dialogue scenes, but the camera will kind of fixate on Ben. And often through like clever little editing tricks, they'll just remind you that there's something going on in this kid's head. The music will also support this and really push the emotion, but without ever giving away the whole jig. So you get the feeling of this movie constantly pushed forward, but there's a restraint to it. That's probably what's left this movie so open to interpretation. More than 50 years later, people are still reading things into this movie that feels emotionally resonant, you know? That feels contemporary, it feels relevant to our times. I've included enough cool movies on this list, right? I think I can allow myself one little uncool movie. Well, here it is. Number 3, Taste of Cherry. I feel like you can divide people up pretty well on this one point. You either think about death or you don't really think about death. Now, if you do, then this movie might be for you. It's an Iranian film and it's extremely simple, extremely bare bones. The entire movie is just this guy driving around the city in his Land Rover, picking up hitchhikers and taking them where they need to go, but using that as a chance to ask them a favor. And he's intentionally vague about what this favor is, but he says he'll pay them really, really well if they help him with this one thing.
10 دقیقه کار میکنی به اندازه 6 ماه یه کارگر پول میگیری. این برات باید مهم باشه.
پس کار شما چیه مثلا؟
دیگه بیشتر از این چی میخوای؟ نوع کارش برات مهم نیست، پولش چقدر؟
خب باید بدونم کار شما چیه مثلا.
Obviously, you start to wonder what kind of thing he might want from them. Once you find out what it is, the people that he picks up start to have these extremely long, drawn-out conversations with him. They don't even know the guy. But this thing makes them break out into deep, long conversation. And it feels so natural. It just feels as though this could not have possibly been scripted. It feels too real. If you have that existential funny bone, then this movie's gonna tickle it oh so tenderly.
میگم که شما اگه مشکل مالی دارین من میتونم کمکتون بکنم. شما مشکل مالی ندارین؟
نه خیلی.
میتونم کمکتون بکنم.
برو اینجا من هستم میذارم در محل سرویس میکنم. برو دیگه.
Number 2, Y tu mamá también.
Y tu mamá también.
Okay, so this segment is going to be a bit longer than any of the other movies, but I have to give you guys a little bit of context on this. The director and cinematographer duo who worked on this movie have had a pretty long and fruitful career in mainstream movies. But right before making this movie, they'd gotten themselves involved in a Hollywood project that they didn't really want to get involved in. They spent a year making something that they didn't really care about, and of course ended up with a movie that they weren't all that proud of. They left Hollywood, feeling kind of sick and bitter over the whole thing, and went back to Mexico, back to their roots. And they decided to make the movie that they would have made before Hollywood. The movie they would have made before film school. And the result is a giant middle finger to the Hollywood style of making movies. It's a middle finger to professionalism in cinematography. It's a middle finger to the idea of film school. Everything. This movie established the style that the two of them would use on all the rest of their films together. But you know what? This movie's still better than any of those fucking movies. It's a road trip film, so it's conventionally entertaining, it's funny, but there's this experimental flair to it that is just so profound. Okay, let me just tell you about the plot. It's about these two teenage boys. They meet this married woman at this fancy party and they start flirting with her, and they kind of jokingly invite her along to this road trip that they're planning. They're going to Heaven's Mouth, the most beautiful hidden beach in Mexico.
Es como una mordidita así de nube y cielo, pero acá. Pero acá la tierra echando su raíz. Oye, pues podría venir ella aquí, ¿no? Claro, ¿por qué no vienes con nosotros?
Next thing you know, she wants to come with them. And she leaves her husband, and they have a road trip movie. The movie is constantly reminding you that the plot is kind of shallow and silly, and there are a million other stories happening around this plot. A million things that you don't pay attention to. The three of them will sit down to dinner somewhere, and they'll be just talking, and the camera will forget about them and just wander off into the kitchen and show you what the kitchen staff are doing, the kind of stuff that they get up to back there. Sometimes the audio will just cut out, and this narrator's voice.
Ese mismo día hubo 3 manifestaciones en distintos lugares de la ciudad. Sin embargo, el embotellamiento que los detenía había sido provocado por un peatón atropellado, Marcelino Escutia, un albañil inmigrado de Michoacán. Marcelino fue alcanzado por un pecero que conducía con exceso de velocidad.
For no good reason. It's not related to the plot at all. It's kind of a gimmick, I guess, but it's so closely tied into the themes, and it becomes so meaningful by the end of the movie that you can't call it a gimmick. This is pure style. It is really, it's something else.
Okay, well.
Number 1, American Honey.
What kind of dumbass are you asking random girls to go to Kansas with you?
Oh, no. It's a fucking job. You know what I mean? This is a job. Can't even talk, man. See?
I just like this movie. I guess I like it for simple reasons. I like that the characters are immature. I like that everything feels unscripted.
What's crazy is I got you a present, now I'm not gonna give you a fucking thing, stupid.
What present? What about my present?
Ain't no fucking present no more, it's gone. Forget about it. I'm gonna throw it in the trash.
There's something about when foreign filmmakers do films about the world of the US. They treat it like it's some fantasy landscape.
Oh, I feel like I'm fucking America.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't really want to say too much about the movie. It's just a simple and tender and beautifully executed film experience.
Oh, I love boats.
You got a boat?
Never even been to the ocean. I know it's crazy, but one day, it's my dream.
So that's it. 10 movies I love. And what do you think of these movies? Do you love them? You hate them? If you haven't seen some of them, do you want to now? Let me know. Comment below. And don't forget to tell your friends and tell your parents how to watch movies. Just a quick shout out to all of the active viewers on this channel. Those of you who watch all my shit, who comment on everything, you guys are the best. Especially you, Vertigo Gnome.